What's going on, everyone? It is the Derv, and today I'm bringing you a build that centers around spamming your Song of Flame super in as little as 30 seconds of a cooldown. Yes, and we are also going to be using an exotic piece of armor that is sort of off the beaten path when you think of all things solar related, but we're going to blend it all in a prismatic build that I think is really going to be useful in a variety of content. Despite my horrible DPS in this run of Quarter Blades, this build absolutely does wreck in so many different activities, and I think this build is going to be well received by those who love this super because that is what it's all about. So I apologize for my tardiness. I've been under the weather, but let's get on into it. So I want you guys to look at the lower left hand of your screen. I understand that this is a controlled situation, but we are going to be able to get our super regenerated as quickly as humanly possible with the play style that you see on your screen. When you factor in everything else that we're going to go over in the build, you should be able to get your super back even faster depending on the situation. So as stated in the intro, the goal is to be able to spam your super Song of Flame as often as possible. Song of Flame. Release a supercharged melee attack that launches additional projectiles. You can also create a sentient flame wisp that seeks out targets and detonates in a scorching explosion, then seeks out other nearby targets. While Song of Flame is active, you and nearby allies regenerate abilities more quickly, are more resistant to incoming damage, and your solar and kinetic weapons scorch targets. So there's a lot of things going on with Song of Flame if you've never bothered to read through that, but that is the goal of this build, is to spam Song of Flame as often as possible. For abilities, we're going to go with Healing Rift, Burst Glide, and we're also going to 100% equip our Arcane Needle, as well as our Storm Grenade. Both of these are imperative to having this build work. For aspects, we're going to go with Lightning Surge, as well as Feed the Void. Feed the Void, of course, is going to give us our grenade and our health back, and Lightning Surge is going to be able to jolt targets and grant us Bolt Charge. For aspects, we're going to go with Facet of Purpose. Picking up an Orb of Power in this case will generate us Restoration based on the damage type of your equipped super. Of course, Restoration, you regenerate health and shields over time, and it cannot be interrupted by taking damage. Next up is going to be Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. This is going to be imperative because we need to have our melee ability constantly up throughout every activity that we might find ourselves in. The grenade, we are going to obviously be using that, but it's going to be a sporadic use. It's not going to be our main play here. Next up is going to be Facet of Sacrifice. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. Plus 10 to Discipline. Our light buff in this case is either going to be Amplified, Bolt Charge, Radiant, Restoration, Devour, and that's it. So basically, if you have any of those buffs, you're going to get bonus Darkness Transcendence energy when you use your abilities, which in this case is going to be Lightning Surge. Facet of Awakening is next up on the list. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows generates an elemental pickup of matching damage type. Our matching damage types are going to be the following. We're going to get Ionic Traces, and we're going to get Fire Sprites. Fire Sprites, of course, are going to appear randomly when we cast our Song of Flame, which will grant us grenade energy when we pick them up, which means if you have grenade energy when your super ends, you don't have to pick them up until after you use your grenade. And Ionic Traces, a bolt of pure arc energy that travels along the ground seeking towards its creator. When picked up, Ionic Traces grant ability energy. So with us going to be spamming Lightning Surge, we're going to be generating Ionic Traces regularly, which means that all of our abilities should theoretically be refreshed on a very frequent basis. Last but not least is going to be Facet of Dominance. Your Void Grenades weaken targets, and your Arc Grenades jolt targets. This fragment is exactly why we need to make sure that we have the Storm Grenade equipped. We want to be able to jolt targets, and with our exotic armor of choice, jolting targets is going to debuff them, which is in turn going to give us super energy or just in general ability energy back faster. Now, there is some room for debate here. If you are concerned that you are going to be running solar and you don't have Facet of Ruin on, you can absolutely swap this out with Facet Dominance. You will get your 10 discipline back, and you will also gain additional 10 to your mobility. You could also make an argument for using Faceted Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage, while Transcendent, the effects is increased. Either way, I think you win with any of these three, but for the sake of the build itself, our main goal is to be able to generate Jolt as much as possible, and we do that more with Facet Dominance than these other two. However, you can make an argument that the next up on the list would probably be Facet of Ruin, given what exotic weapon we are going to be using, and then the third option would obviously be Facet of Protection. For stats, we're going to go with Resilience, Strength, and Discipline, specifically in that order. If you can only focus on two stats to get as high to a T10 as you possibly can, it would be Resilience and Strength. The reason is because we're going to be spamming our melee, our charge melee when we slide forward and use Lightning Surge, and of course having resistance to elemental and just overall damage in general is going to be pivotal, since this is more of an aggressive build. Having your grenade above a T5 is going to be a win for you. Having your intellect, for example, at a T5 or higher is probably not, because with the mods that we're going to have on our armor, we're going to be getting our super back insanely quickly, regardless of where our intellect is, as long as it's at a minimum of a T3. For our kinetic weapon, I'm going to go with Mirror Imago from the Nether. Pugilist and Hatchling are two fantastic perks that you can get with this, but there are a lot of perks with Mirror Imago that are going to be great regardless. The other option that I would recommend is the Multimac CCX. Attrition Orbs and Kinetic Tremors, not to mention the ability to generate Ionic Traces, or Fire Sprites, or Void Breaches, or whatever, depending on the super of choice. So with your Multimac, you're actually going to generate Fire Sprites, depending on if you have the artifact mod equipped. These two are going to be the best options because it gives you the ability to generate an additional amount of ability energy regeneration. Multimac, of course, has Attrition Orbs, and Mirror Imago has Pugilist. If you have another Pugilist weapon, that will substitute here just fine. And if you have another weapon that has Attrition Orbs and Kinetic Tremors, that will substitute here just fine as well. But you want to generate as much damage as possible, which is why I'm recommending a 900 round per minute submachine gun. In the energy slot, I've got Akaja's Dejection, Reconstruction, and Vorpal. This is going to be used primarily as a backup DPS option. When we get to the heavy option, I'm going to explain how we're going to use this to catapult our damage on top of the damage we're already generating. If you do not have Akaja's Dejection, my number one suggestion for replacement is going to be Retrace Path, which you can get from Dares of Eternity. Retrace Path, you can craft it however you want. I have mainly used this as an add clear weapon, which is why I have it set up with Perpetual Motion and Incandescent, but you can pair it however you want to do. As far as backup options, if you want the ability to pierce barriers, you can put on a Baron Action. You can also make an argument for putting on Lord of Wolves. You can also make an argument for putting on Prometheus Lens, which will generate Scorch the longer the flame remains on a target. Of course, if you want the ability to stun unstoppable champions, you can put on the Eremite. And you can also put on Beloved if you want the ability to use a sniper rifle from distance and still be able to get some bonus DPS. For our heavy weapon, 100% I'm going to recommend Dragon's Breath. Now, the reason this is important with our energy option is one of the things that we can do with our trace rifles is deal bonus damage when our trace rifle element matches the debuff of the element applied to an enemy. So the way that this is going to go is you're going to shoot your Dragon's Breath, and then you're going to switch to Akaja's Dejection or your Retrace Path, and you're just going to lay into the enemy until you see the fire stop. Once the fire stops, you swap back to Dragon's Breath, and then you repeat the process over. This is going to generate an additional amount of damage that is going to stack over time. So all you're going to really be doing is just furthering your damage output with virtually doing nothing at all. Fire your rocket, get extra damage. Fire your rocket, get extra damage. It is that simple. If you don't want to use Dragon's Breath and you want to use something else, you'll never go wrong with Microcosm, but if you want to stick with Solar, I recommend either 1000 Voices, Xenophage, or Sleeper Stimulant, or Whisper of the Worm. All of these are going to give you very, very good damage. Whisper is probably going to be the most difficult to use simply because it is a sniper rifle, and Microcosm, of course, is going to be the easiest to use because it is a trace rifle. If you want to opt for a legendary option, you can always go with Briar's Contempt. Reconstruction and Focus Fury does an insane amount of damage on bosses as long as you are hitting your crits. And, of course, you can't go wrong with good old Apex Predator. Reconstruction and Bipod means you get 4 rounds per magazine when fully loaded. And I'm never going to say anything bad about Apex, but even with all of these weapon options, it's not going to do the additional tick damage as your Dragon's Breath unless you build into it. So just use whatever you feel is best, but how I have it set up right now, I would recommend at least just trying it and then making changes as you see fit based on the activity that you need to be in. So Crown of Tempest is going to be our exotic armor of choice. Its armor per conduction times, while you have an arc ability equipped, arc ability or jolt final blows increase the recharge rate of your abilities and extend duration of storm trance. We don't care about the last 30% of that statement. However, what we do care about is while you have any arc ability equipped, jolt final blows increase the recharge rate of your abilities, and that includes your super as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our primary weapon be our main add clear weapon, so we're going to put on a siphon that matches that, whether that's kinetic or strand like what I've got it, doesn't matter, just make sure you have it. We're going to roll with 2 hands-on mods. That means every lightning surge ability kill that we get is going to grant us super energy. We're going to round that out with minor general armor mod and make sure you put on your artifice mod so you can get a +3. If you do it like this, you absolutely give yourself the best chance to roll with a 30-second turnaround between each Song of Flame cast. And no, I'm not joking. Even in Vanguard Strikes, even in regular Nightfalls, even in Dares of Eternity, or places where you are going to be running from encounter to encounter like raids, this will work beautifully. For the gloves, we're going to run with 3 heavy-handeds so that every second that we cast our charged melee, which is going to be our lightning surge, we will generate an orb of power. An orb of power will not only grant us ability energy, but it will also help us get our super energy back even faster. So when you multiply these plus what we've got on our helmet, it's going to make for an even faster cooldown of our super, which is our main goal of this entire build. To capitalize on this, we're going to only be able to put a minor mod on. So if it is the difference between having, a T7 or a T6 and a T5, just go with your T5, accept that we're going for super regeneration, and go ahead and just try it. And if you have to farm armor to compensate, go ahead and do so from failsafe in the helm. For our chest armor, go ahead and put on solar reserves. Reason being is our energy weapon and our heavy weapon are solar, so it's going to bonus for both of them. Put on 2 elemental resistance mods, and then this is going to be one of the pieces of armor where you're going to have 4 spots left over. So if you do need to spec into resilience a little bit more, go ahead and do so, or get your intellect above the minimum of a T3. Last but not least is going to be our class item. Go ahead and put on a Reaper because you are going to be using your Rift while you're doing damage with your weapons, and go ahead and put on an Outreach so that every time that you use your class ability, you get a little bit of tick down to your melee. Go ahead and put on Font of Restoration so that you can proc your melee more often and regenerate your health as much as possible. And make sure that you mod your armor as you need it. If you don't have an Artifice slot, you can ignore this, but make sure that you mod into at least melee if it's not, or strength I should say, if it's not where you want it to be. For our artifact, you can copy kind of what you see on the screen. However, depending on your weapon choices, you may want to change at least the first column up. In the first column, I've got Unstoppable Rocket Launcher, Overload Trace Rifles, and Piercing Sidearms. Piercing Sidearms is on here, of course, because if I do opt to run with a sidearm in the primary slot, I can still pierce barrier champs when they pop their shields. In the second column, I've got Unraveling Orbs and Vile Weave, because quite honestly, Strand is just too good to put down this season. In the third column, I've got Photonic Flare, and I've also got Dielectric. Photonic Flare, defeating an exhausted or severed target with arc damage, releases a blinding burst. That includes Lightning Surge. And then Dielectric, defeating arc debuff targets grants Bolt Charge. So that's Bolt Charge on top of Bolt Charge, which means you will proc your lightning strikes more often. In the fourth column, we're going to go with Flashover, Horde Shuttle, Harsh Refraction, and Gold from Lead. Gold from Lead is important because we're running with a rocket launcher, and we're also not running with a heavy ammo finder. Harsh Refraction is important because when we shoot our enemy with our Dragon's Breath, we're going to switch back to our Trace Rifle, and our Trace Rifle, which is solar, is going to do additional damage to the target afflicted by the elemental debuff, matching the damage type, which in this case is Scorch and Solar. Horde Shuttle, of course, Strand is just too good to put down, so I'm never giving that up, at least for this season. And then Flashover, I want to get, when I get my maximum Bolt Charge, even if I am not currently in the midst of battle, I would love to become amplified so I can get back to battle faster. In the last column, I highly recommend Heavy Ordnance Regeneration. Dealing sustained damage to targets with a heavy machine gun or rocket launcher grants damage resistance and increases grenade and melee regeneration for a short duration. Dragon's Breath does proc Scorch, it does eject fuel, it does do area damage over time. That's all going to feed into your grenade and melee regeneration, so it makes the most sense to have that as your heavy weapon. You could make an argument for putting on Limit Break, you could make an argument for Defibrillating Blast, you could make an argument for 2 Shreds, but honestly, this last column, if you're running with a rocket launcher like Dragon's Breath, this one is going to make the most sense. Now, some of you might be looking at this and thinking, well, I don't really care, about this mod, or maybe I want to run with a kinetic weapon instead of Strand, so I can use the Strand mods to put on something else. You absolutely can. This is going to be an individual choice for everyone that's watching this video. So don't think that how I have it set up is how you have to run it or the build won't work. Your armor mods are still your armor mods. Your super is still your super. Your playstyle is still your playstyle. So however you decide to have your primary ad clear weapon and your backup DPS weapon is completely up to you. This is just a very simple way to make it viable, and then you can tweak it as you need. One of the reasons I would say that you want to try this build is, quite honestly, solar is still solar. It is extremely easy to use, provides scorch damage, which is unlike any other kind of damage out there. You look amazing while you're lighting the battlefield on fire, literally, and not to mention, you can do insane DPS and insane single target damage and insane area effect damage with very little effort. Song of Flame is not going away anytime soon, and the potency behind it, I certainly hope, is not going away anytime soon. Not to mention, when you proc Song of Flame, your nearby allies to you are going to become radiant and help you be able to defeat the boss or champ or whatever that's in front of you more efficiently. So everybody wins. This is definitely an unconventional way to get your super back faster. However, Song of Flame is one of those, it's not a roaming super, it's not an instant burst DPS super like Nova Bomb, for example. So being able to get this super back faster without having to take advantage of Bungie's inert buff of roaming supers or just something else within your armor is a huge, it's an increase in quality of life, it's an increase in fun factor, and it's also just a way for you to be able to deal with so many more enemies in a so much more powerful way. So if you want to make changes for this build that I've got, I would recommend at least just trying it with the setup that I have now, or as close to it as you can. Just try it and see how you can do. If you feel that the activities that you run warrant you switching out weapons, you have other options that can pair with what we've got going on. But while we have it right now, you've got overloads handled and you've got unstoppable champs handled. The barriers you're going to have to negotiate either with maybe a sidearm in the primary slot, or you're going to have to switch things up. You could also make your ad clear, a solar weapon. That's why I have perfect pitch on here. So either way, whatever you guys feel is necessary, go ahead and do it. Your main play here is to spam your lightning surge and get your Song of Flame back as fast as possible. And we accomplish this with this build. So if you guys do find anything helpful with this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there who is looking for a different way, kind of off the beaten path, of how to generate their Song of Flame super more frequently because they like using it so much, send them my way or share this video with them. My goal is to help as many people as possible. As always, I will have a dim link in the description. And if you guys are looking for a non-toxic gaming community centered around Destiny, feel free, follow the link in the description, join up on my Discord. We have a lot of great people in there that are willing to help, get you guys to the next level or help you just in general with whatever you need. Again, very friendly group of people, no toxicity. We've got gaining interest in accomplishing endgame type activities. And, if you've been a solo player for a while or you've been a part of a toxic clan, or just a toxic gaming community in general, you know how off-putting it is to try to ask for help. The community I'm trying to build in my Discord is the exact opposite. They're all willing to help. They're all interactive. They're all nice people. And I wouldn't be able to offer a community such as this without them. So shout out to my Discord and shout out to anyone who's looking for that gaming community that they can at least come to whenever, even if it's randomly. Hey, I need help with one thing. Hey, I need help with this thing. There's people in there willing to put their time and effort in to help you enjoy the game more. So anyways, I'm going to switch over to the next highlight video and talk through a couple more things. So during the video, I mentioned that during different activities, you may be going in between battles where there's going to be a lot of running. There's going to be times where you're not going to be surrounded by enemies, and it's really going to depend on you how often you want to pop your Song of Flame super. This is one of the best examples I can give you, an actual battleground run. And before you guys destroy me in the comments telling me, oh, it's not a GM, oh, it's not a Master Nightfall or whatever, believe me, I get it. It's just a showcase that even in regular everyday content, this build can still do exactly everything that you want to do. When we get to the end screen, you're going to see just how many orbs of power I was able to generate from this playstyle. So if I can generate that from something as simple as this, once you get into dungeons or raids or things where all of those things are going to matter even more than what you're going to need in, say, like a regular Vanguard run like this, which just happened to be a battleground, you'll see the value at getting your abilities back even quicker. And in this one, I was able to use my super in every major encounter. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Take care.